This is the big one, guys. So check it out. Fantasia Film Festival has been going on, and I have been bringing you all the coverage I can possibly fit into this channel. And one of my dream interviews I got to do thanks to Fantasia Film Festival, and that is with director of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, the Blob 1988 remake, one of the best practical effects movies ever made, and one of my favorite films of all time, and Jim Carrey's The Mask. And that is director Chuck Russell. And I got to sit down and talk to him about his new movie called Witchboard. And it's a remake of the original. So let's check it out. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. I really appreciate it. It's a huge honor. I'm a huge fan of The Blob. It is literally one of my top 10 movies of all time.
Oh, thank you so much.
It is. I watch it probably 3 times a year. Like, no joke. So thank you for taking the time.
see us wrestling against real physical effects of The Blob. It never gets old.
I don't think there's ever been a movie that did it like that. So, you know.
The Blob and The Mask remain visually really, really unique, and I think I've hopefully done it again with Witchboard.
Yes, no, there is a lot of visuals in this, and it's actually pretty brutal. Actually,
yes, we have fun with the thrill ride of this, but I think you can't do the horror genre without making sure your scares are terrifying. So I didn't hold back. Yeah,
there's a scene that's about 2/3 of the way in that just goes insanely wild that I was like, oh my God.
We set it up though. It makes great story sense. And there's a lot of suspense leading to that. And I think hopefully the audience just has an aha moment, how something like that could actually occur.
Now, I have to ask you, because it seems like you wrote this yourself, correct? With someone else. It doesn't say,
Greg
Kevin Tenney.
Greg McKay, who's a producing partner who brought the property to me originally, did a first draft. And I give him credit for the concept of the restaurant, because I thought, oh my, great, we can do foodie horror here. But Greg was did something much closer to the original, and I just wanted to explode the whole idea and bring in something I've been interested in for years, which are pendulum boards that are important in the world of mystics and the supernatural, and have been for centuries. And I'd never seen on film, and they're so visual. I couldn't imagine why. So I'm glad we got to do what I believe is the first pendulum board movie.
Well, especially after the first movie already had to have so many problems with the Ouija board, right?
Correct. And we have seen, since then, they created a kind of a subgenre of Ouija board movies. Right. Pendulum boards are actually the direct predecessor to the Ouija board, because it's true historically, the French Pope outlawed them in the 1700s. If you had a spirit wheel or witch board, you were burnt at the stake. So that led to another divination tool, which was the Ouija board that used the planchette instead of the pendulum. And pendulum boards were used for a wider variety of witchcraft, including spell casting. So I thought that was just fascinating.
I've seen a couple of different versions of them, but yeah, the pendulum one is pretty unique, I think, in the movie industry a little bit.
There's astrologically based ones. There's mythology based ones that are truly ancient and Wiccan and pagan. And they're ones that are more fanciful. So I got to design. I had a lot of fun designing the board using, real mystical symbols of good and evil. I could tell you what everything means if you want to hear the whole story. Something.
Well, I was curious. Like, now, how close are you to this project? As far as did you read the script and go, "Oh, this is awesome," or were you a big fan of the original Witchboard?
I'm a big fan of things that are evergreen in pop culture. And I thought Witchboard is still resonant. It was a low budget movie in its time, but a unique one. It still has its diehard fans. And I thought, well, this is something almost similar to The Blob, where I can take a central idea and really reinvent it, reimagine it. I sometimes feel like we're like storytellers around the campfire. You want to personalize the story. You want to take the story further. That's really like why I like what people call remakes. It just is a great platform to take further when there's a sense in pop culture of the original story.
Right. And, and the terminology is so loose these days anymore, because it seems like if the more you add, then it becomes a reboot. And then it's like,
maybe I don't know what we are. I never was too intellectual. I thought, oh my God, what if I did Witchboard, show the true predecessor, which is the more ancient device of pendulum boards, and basically do anything in horror I feel I haven't yet done yet. And if you've seen the film, you'll realize there's a range of amazing. It kind of doubles up as it goes along into how magical it becomes.
Yeah, no, that's actually a question I was thinking about, is because the tone of it is there's a couple of different things going on here, because it's a lot of fun, but it's also kind of really dark and really, messed up in a lot of the scenes. So it's like,
I think that's a compliment. I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and knowing the original movies, they all kind of had a little bit of like this flair about it. And I was kind of curious, like how you went into this, like what tone did you really want to get with this movie, or was it already laid out in the script, or did you have kind of an idea?
For me, while I've enjoyed doing different genres and different styles of filmmaking, my most fun in horror, honestly, is to have a little fun in horror. I want to entertain the hell out of the audience, literally. So I always make sure that we don't get silly, because I want the scares to work. That's really the only reason to do horror, is to deliver those big set pieces. And based on the audience reaction last night, it plays. So I'm excited about that. Practical effects, practical-based effects remain ageless, timeless. Yeah. That's why, to my surprise, Elm Street 3 and the Blob still seem to have a life in the fan base, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, I think you are probably one of the more epitome of the directors of that kind of thing, right? Because the Blob is considered to be right next there to the Thing, and so a lot of people love that.
I'm a big fan of the Thing and John Carpenter. Let's not forget David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Very true.
Which is what sort of proved to me we can take that germ that's from pop culture, from an original, and really blow it up and do so shamelessly to be entertaining.
Curious, it's been a little while since you've done a horror picture. Is there any particular reason that's held you back for so long, or?
I was getting tired of behaving. So in movie star driven films, part of my gig is to serve the brand, and to, in my opinion, to elevate the brand, tell a great story. In the thrillers, you have to be a little edgier style. I wanted to go back to horror and just basically have a blast and invite the audience to have a blast.
I noticed you also had kind of a hand in some of the people that you picked for the movie. I'd seen some quotes about some of the cast, and it's a pretty big cast.
Every director better have a hand in casting the movie. That's what you're referring to, of course.
Some more than others, I would think, but yeah.
I come from theater originally, and one of the most thrilling things about directing is having new talent and taking them past their limits.
Right.
And we have a marvelous ensemble cast. And Jamie Campbell Bower, already well established from Stranger Things, is amazing. I find him mesmerizing, with no exaggeration, whenever he comes on screen. Incredible to work with. In the tradition of great English actors, watch Jamie Campbell Bower. He's going to do whatever he wants to with his career in the future. He's very, very... And the whole cast is talented. Madison Eisman goes through a Shakespearean level of terror and drama and character arcs all over the place in this film. She's just so talented. Aaron Dominguez, I don't want to go bore your audience with, look at our cast list. Some of these names are going to be a lot bigger in the very near future.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had heard that you got Jamie Campbell Bower from seeing his performance in Vecna, as Vecna in Stranger Things. And
I'm like, who is this guy? I haven't quite seen. And yet it turns out he was in Twilight. He's been in a number of great films in an ensemble position. So I was like, let me find out who he is and what he's doing this year. And we were lucky enough to get him on board.
A pretty big cast here. I mean, even Charlie Tahan from,
isn't Charlie so memorable?
Right.
And I know him from Ozark, and I'm like, there's something else beyond acting this young man is doing. And what you see on screen is the real Charlie. He's just a fascinating character.
I was wondering, when did you actually film this? Because I know that it says 2023 it was started.
We finished last year. I'm so bad with dates because for me, between writing and prepping and shooting, it was all last year, I think, starting around May. And we made it just before the complicated strikes. And because we had started before we had the permission of the unions, which I respect. And I was lucky enough to get an incredible crew here in Montreal. Very, very talented people here.
Would never know that it's Montreal. Although the older buildings, I guess,
Well, the choice is based on the fact, there's a parallel storyline in the 1700s. And there are buildings here literally from the 1700s we were allowed.
That's
right. And we shot in New Orleans, but it's basic film craft. We dressed Montreal Street in New Orleans fashion, which was a lot of fun. We had an incredible production designer and great art department. And I got to use all the music. My grandpa used to play Dixieland, God bless him. And I was raised when they babysat me with all that jazz music. So that's where the music comes from, The Mask, and that's where the New Orleans music comes from my background anyway, here in Witchboard.
Excellent. Yeah, it's funny. I just actually literally watched a big YouTube video about French and Creole language and how, because of, the French rule, they came all the way down to Louisiana. And, that's why it's so connected from Montreal.
There's a connection between France and Louisiana. And there's a connection between pendulum boards very directly to Ouija boards. So I'm like, okay, I'm on the Witchboard train. I'm going where the story takes me now.
So how much of this do you actually believe?
Are
you a believer?
I believe magic in most forms are based on human intention. I think the human spirit is much more powerful than people are led to believe. So in good intentions as well as evil intentions. So I believe in a spiritual world. I've had weird events in my life. So I respect that spiritual world. And I like the metaphor between mysticism or the occult and drugs, because I think they're very similar. You can have a gateway experience with astrology you like, or someone with tarot cards, and it's charming and sort of fun. But it can lead to darker things. So beware, folks. If you dabble in this sort of thing, yeah, I do believe I won't do a Ouija board.
Right.
I believe in it by channeling your own intentions and saying, please enter. That's a door you may not be able to close.
Hey, we have one, but she won't let me bring it in the house.
Look,
it's in the garage.
I respect everybody's interests. That's just my personal advice.
We don't have the pendulum one, okay, but it's one of the older ones. But obviously, the story of this is very different than the original. But both of them are kind of warning about the use of this and how it's charming, like you said, use. It's literally charming, and it can become an obsession. And should some bad accident happen randomly after you use a Ouija board or a pendulum board, that's why I don't touch this stuff, because I would never know if there was a connection. And so the film obviously takes that idea to the nth degree, as we say. A lot of the stuff that you did in the movie kind of does very different things, although it kind of feels a little bit like the original movie in some regards. Like you even had at the end of the first movie, there was like a thing that happens with the window and falling, and you kind of added something in there to kind of
there were many things. There was a love triangle at the beginning. It happened to be two guys and one girl. We flipped it so it's two girls and one guy. There's things that we honor the original.
Yeah,
we really do. But I'm not limited by it.
Right.
So I have a short attention span, and so does my audience. I want to give them something they've never seen before.
I noticed you used a little bit of practical and a little bit of CGI. Of course, there is a lot of blood in this movie. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the choices that you made in?
Look, practical effects age better than CGI, and I say that I love CGI and was one of the pioneers in The Mask. It was very early in the development of that technology, and a great tool. But things you might think were CGI are practical in this film. So I use CGI as the secret sauce for finishing certain things, and it's a great tool. But the actors' performances are much more effective with real physical effects. Beyond the effects themselves looking good, there's a moment before I say action when an actor knows some element is going to explode at them from the set, where there's actually real terror, while it's my job to make sure everything is absolutely safe.
Sure.
It still brings an extra energy, let's call it, to the performance that I find amazing.
Yeah, you couldn't pull a Ridley Scott on them and have something like go haywire and go wrong on him.
Does Ridley do that? Shame on him.
I think it was Ridley Scott with the first movie with the chest burster scene, right? So they surprised them. He didn't tell them it was going to happen right away. So
I'm so obsessed with safety because I've done some big stunt work that I wouldn't do that. But it's true. I didn't let Victoria see one of the makeup effects that Eric Dominguez had before we were filming. And it was a very disturbing effect.
I was curious, to see if you pulled any of those out. Because, you want to get the most authentic.
That's true. That's true. But the physical stuff is well rehearsed. But it's still, when it's the set is lit and the levers are cranked backward for release, it's always something special. We built that whole bathroom set 8 feet in the air.
Oh, wow.
So all the things that happened to her and her nightmares are real things Madison had to go through.
Yeah, I really, I can't talk about it. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but I really like that there is the twist in this a little bit. And it's obvious to me that, there is something deeper going on here that maybe could lead to subsequent sequels. And I'd heard that someone had asked you and you said, "Oh, I'm not opposed to it." So
no, I'm certainly not, but I think it's very pretentious for people to do their unless you're Marvel or something and the comic books already exist. I think that I have to learn now the bounce with audiences. And last night here at the Fantasia Festival was awesome because it's such a lively audience that I can really see where it ought to go should there be a sequel. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility, but it's all about the first film and making sure we deliver for audiences.
Did you do a whole lot of research on this French background with the dark arts?
Yes, the research I did on Wicca applied to an early draft of the script where the 1700s were in America. Mm-hmm. But when I scouted Montreal, I thought, the French language is magical to us Americans. I can hear it, but I can't speak it. In other words, I can understand a lot of French, but I can't speak it. But I thought it was so elegant. Let's set it in France, which had some of the worst witch trials, and where the Pope had outlawed the pendulum. It all came together. And so there's a parallel 1700 story in the French language that I think makes the film, gives it more flair, makes it feel a little more international.
Well, it seems like, I'm glad to see you back.
Thank you.
I was always hoping for a Blob sequel. Maybe we'll get that one day.
That can happen. That can happen.
Hey, that's all I need to hear, and I'll be happy for the rest of my life. So, thank you so much, Mr. Russell, for taking your time with me.
Great question, great interview, great hat.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good one, and good luck.
Thank you.